Chapter 3080. She saw that the dress was all right, but it was a little expensive. Wei Bai reached out to touch it. The material was passable. At her age, it was not suitable for her to be so mature and gorgeous. Pure and cute was her style. Hence, she just took a look. After reading it, she calmly ate her ice cream and walked back. In this weather, it was more comfortable in the mall. She would get heat stroke if she stayed outside for too long. She had just finished her ice cream when she heard her phone ring. The male lead was here to rush her. Wei Bai picked up the phone. By Xiaoyu? She picked up the phone and heard by Xiaoyu's soft voice. Wei, your brother wants you to come home for dinner. Why are you still outside so late at night? It's dangerous for a girl like you to go home. Wei Bai listened to this voice. It was so soft that even women would feel weak in the knees. It was no wonder that she had done so well in the social circle when she was young. Now that she was middle-aged, she could even make Fu Yuheng's father fall for her. She raised her eyebrows and remained silent for a while before saying, Mom, can I move out on my own? She said as she walked out. He looked as if he had lost his soul. Bai Xiaoyu was anxious. Why are you not listening? Just go back when I ask you to. Do you know that Fu Yuheng is the one who controls the Fu family? If you don't listen to him, he will cut off your Uncle Fu's source of income. That would be killing him. Wei Bai had already walked out of the mall. She stopped by the roadside, lowered her head, and pursed her lips. Finally, she said softly, But Fu Yuheng, Bai Xiaoyu said in a low voice, he can do whatever he wants. If you follow him, you will be helping me too. Wei Bai suddenly suppressed her voice. Do you think I'm a prostitute? Bai Xiaoyu immediately said, How can you talk to me like that? If you are obedient, I will just die. If you wanted to go back to the way I was before, I would rather not live. Wei Bai, she clutched her phone tightly. Suddenly, she choked and said, I'll go back. Bai Xiaoyu heaved a sigh of relief. That's good. Listen to your brother in the future. Don't run out alone. Before he could finish speaking, she heard Wei Bai's voice slowly ring out. You really don't know what Fu Yuheng wants me to do. Bai Xiaoyu was taken aback. Then, she smiled awkwardly and changed the topic. Your Uncle Fu is calling me. Remember to go home. The call ended. Wei Bai stood by the side of the road and remained in a daze. She blinked. Suddenly, her eyes turned red as if she had lost all her strength. She slowly squatted down and held her forehead with her hand. It was as if he wanted to cry, but he couldn't. Through the half-opened rear window of the black car parked at the side, the young man stared at her coldly. The girl seemed to have been abandoned by the whole world. Her lonely and slender back was bent, and her helpless appearance was simply like a small animal with nowhere to go. Furthermore, he was injured and looked so weak that he couldn't even withstand a single blow. He lowered his eyes, concealing the strange ripple that flashed through his eyes. Then he opened the car door and walked in front of her. He bent down and reached out as if he wanted to touch her head. He hesitated for a moment and paused in midair. Then he said in a low voice, Let's go back. It's very late. She had been wandering outside for the entire day, and he had followed her for the entire day. He saw her eating at roadside stalls, buying ice cream, and going to the game store to play games. She even went to the amusement park to ride the wooden horse. She looked so childish. Her rebelliousness seemed to be just a clumsy cover. On the inside, she still had a weird temper and looked like an obedient child. She didn't even dare to go shopping. Fu Yuheng was distracted and his fingers were slapped away. Wei Bai lowered her head and didn't look at him. She said coldly, Are you satisfied, bastard? Chapter 3081. Fu Yuheng wasn't angry. He looked at the back of his hand that was red. Then, he reached out again and clasped her fingers tightly. His fingertips passed through the gaps between her fingers and held them tightly. Then, he pulled her up and walked towards the car. Wei Bai stumbled as she followed. Her eyes were red, but she stubbornly refused to cry. When Fu Yuheng opened the car door, he saw her pitiful look through the window and paused. He still opened the door and stuffed her into the car. When the driver started to drive, Wei Bai sat and leaned against the window on the other side. She didn't look at him. Fu Yuheng's face was indifferent. The two of them seemed to be staring at each other nervously. The air was so stiff that it was suffocating. Suddenly, the car turned a corner. A force of inertia caused Wei Wei Bai's body to sway. However, this force of inertia wasn't enough to make her fall. She just tilted her body towards Fu Yuheng. In the next moment, she was about to adjust her body's posture so that she wouldn't lean over. Suddenly, a hand with slender and fair fingers clasped her shoulder. It took a while for her body to be brought over. Wei Wei Bai was stunned. Her entire body was leaning against Fu Yuheng. Although it was summer, the young man's breath was exceptionally clear and beautiful. It was especially comfortable. Wei Wei Bai narrowed her eyes. If it wasn't for the character setting, she would have hugged him. After all, in this kind of weather, even if there was an air conditioner in the car, it was also uncomfortable. She pursed her lips and was about to leave with a frown. However, a hand calmly pressed the back of her head and pressed her against his chest. The young man's heart was beating a little fast. However, he looked very normal. He didn't feel nervous at all. Wei Wei Bai's eyelashes fluttered. She gritted her teeth and said coldly, "Let go." Fu Yuheng was silent for a while. There was a hint of frustration in his exquisite eyes. He hesitated for a moment. Then, he said hesitantly, "You can cry it out." This sentence seemed to be a little awkward for him. It was as if he had never comforted anyone like this before. Wei Wei Bai's body trembled. Her face was pressed against his chest, but she didn't make a sound. But there were no tears. She was held down by him, just like that. He seemed to be very sad. Fu Yuheng looked down and saw that her slender back was trembling slightly, as if it was bearing something unbearable. His eyelashes were lowered, and his breathing was heavy. He seemed to be able to sense her helplessness and discomfort. He knew what Bai Xiaoyu would say. He also knew that she would listen. Therefore, calling Bai Xiaoyu to ask her to come back was the best way. But for some reason, when he saw her squatting down weakly by the side of the road, looking so lonely that it made his heart ache, for a moment, he regretted letting Bai Xiaoyu do this. After all, she was a girl who kept calling for her mother when she was sick. The more you value your mother's love, the more painful it will be when you are betrayed. Fu Yuheng's fingers couldn't help but gently pat her back. He could feel the thin and beautiful lines of her back under her clothes. Only then did he realize how thin and weak she was. Suddenly, he heard Wei Wei Bai mutter, "Are you done?" Fu Yuheng paused. He didn't quite understand her words, but he heard the girl in front of his chest say word by word, "Are you done touching? Can I leave now?" These two questions. Instantly, the young man's face was dyed with an imperceptible blush. Only then did he realize how ambiguous his actions were, how much it seemed like molestation. He comforted her into a hooligan. Chapter 3082. Fu Yuheng immediately retracted his finger. After a moment of silence, as if to hide his slight awkwardness, he said in a low voice, "That's enough." Wei Wei Bai immediately left his embrace and retreated to the other side of the car. There was a large gap in between their seats. Fu Yuheng looked at the gap in the middle of the seats and pursed his lips, not saying anything. Then he casually looked up and saw Wei Wei Bai's shadow looking at the car window. She seemed to be careless as she casually wiped her face with her fingers. But he saw the tears falling from her face. Fu Yuheng didn't say a word and didn't try to comfort her again. Perhaps in her eyes, he was the worst person in the world right now. So no matter what he did, she would reject it. Fu Yuheng gently clenched his fingers and put them on his lap, not saying a word. Wei Wei Bai heard the notification sound of the favorability. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 40. Wei Wei Bai wiped the tears that came out because she wanted to sleep. Sigh, this was the favorability brought by guilt. A tender young boy, really pure. Back at home, Bai Weiwei was listless and spiritless. Even a head of honey-colored hair couldn't bring a trace of life to her pale face. She said tiredly, "Do you still need to go to your room tonight?" Fu Yuheng was taking off his coat when he heard this. He was stunned. Then he turned his face and said calmly, "You can come if you want. This isn't forced. If you want to rest, I also," when he said the last few words. He was still a bit unfamiliar. It's not forced. After all, the two of them had this kind of relationship, so to Yuheng, he had to be careful in all of his conversations. He was afraid that if he said too much, it would hurt the girl's self-esteem. This was the first time he had so much to worry about when he spoke. Bai Weiwei didn't say anything and went straight upstairs. She didn't look back once. The youth standing by the clothes rack had an indifferent expression. His fingers gripped his clothes, but he didn't say anything. Then he followed her upstairs. After Fu Yuheng returned to his room, his phone rang. He took a look. It was Old Master. After the call was connected, the old man's voice was extremely calm. A few of the people you forced to retire recently are restless. They have already hooked up with those who haven't retired yet. You have to be careful. Fu Yuheng stood by the table, picked up a fountain pen, and casually drew a relationship diagram on the A4 white paper. Don't worry, I'll keep an eye on them. When the time comes, we'll catch them all in one fell swoop. Old Master Shun was more experienced. Be careful. They're cornered. His grandson's methods were too ruthless. He didn't leave any leeway for them. This could easily lead to a counterattack. Fu Yuheng said calmly, the company has given them enough benefits. If they live well, they won't have to worry about the rest of their lives. I've given them too much, which is why they have such an unbalanced mentality. Humans are greedy. If he gave too much and took back some, it would cause an imbalance in people's hearts. So what? If he dared to continue, his hand would be broken. His gaze turned cold and ruthless. His originally irritable mood was now even more difficult to suppress. Wait for them to cooperate. I'll wipe them all out again. Old Master Shen laughed when he heard this. Why are you suddenly so angry? Aren't you always calm? But this is the right feeling. How old are you? Don't be so lethargic. What was Old Master Shen saying? Fu Yuheng didn't hear him clearly. // Chapter 3083. Because there was an impatient knocking sound outside the door. The rhythm of this sound was Weiwei Bai's. Fu Yuheng hung up the phone immediately. The old man's words became a background noise that he kicked away. Then he turned around and walked quickly to the door, about to open it immediately. But he realized that he was too anxious. The young man stood by the door, his breathing a little messy. Only then did he realize that he was indeed very anxious. He pursed his lips and suppressed his breathing. Then he reached out and opened the door. Then his pupils constricted. He saw the girl standing outside in a little tank top and shorts, hugging a pillow with a cold expression. The little tank top was really too revealing. Only the part that covered her chest, her fair and tender stomach, and her delicate and round shoulders and collarbones were exposed. The shorts she was wearing made her fair legs look even more long and slender. The girl was beautiful, clean, and simply exuded a maddening seductiveness. Fu Yuheng stared blankly for a moment before he kept calm and asked, "What's the matter?" Weiwei Bai rolled her eyes at him coldly and said with a sneer, "I'm here to warm your bed, in case you call my mom again and make her unable to live." This sentence made the young man not know how to refute for a moment. After all, Bai Xiaoyu was indeed under his orders. That was why he asked her to come back. He didn't do it properly. He knew very well. Weiwei Bai could not be bothered to look at him at all. She immediately squeezed past him, hugged the pillow, and walked to the sofa. She sat on the sofa familiarly. She hugged the pillow and leaned against the sofa. Under the sparkling white light, a large part of her back was exposed. Fu Yuheng closed the door and was about to say something when he suddenly paused. Only then did he realize that the front of the tank top was still conservative. The girl's back was only tied with 2 straps. Across the middle of her back, the light red straps were tied into a bow in the middle of her back. Because it was too long, the bow straps dangled under her back and were on the verge of falling off. The thin red straps were flawless on her fair back. They complemented each other. There was a kind of crazy and exciting beauty. She turned around, her long hair draping over her shoulders. The young girl's eyelashes were long and drooping. Under her eyelashes, her beautiful eyes gave off a mesmerizing feeling. A simple glance back. It was a seduction of a stunning beauty. Fu Yuheng's dark eyes deepened. He didn't even move an inch as he stood there in a daze. Weiwei Bai had no idea what kind of impact it had on him. Instead, he turned his head indifferently and said lazily, "I'm selling it to you anyway. You can do whatever you want with it." After saying that, she laughed at herself. "After all, you offered a really high price, didn't you?" As she spoke, She rested her chin on her hand and sneered. I don't know what's wrong with you. Your father is with my mother, but you insist on being with me. What's wrong with you? Wei Wei Bai muttered to herself as she spoke. Damn pervert. Trash. Doing these things at such a young age, you will die a horrible death. These words were muttered, as if they thought that no one could hear them clearly. In a fit of pique, they didn't look like they were here to warm the bed. Instead, they looked more like they were here to anger people to death. Suddenly, Wei Wei Bai frowned as something brushed past the back of her neck. Was it the sound of breathing? She didn't have time to figure it out. A soft kiss had already landed on the back of her neck. It was a light kiss, but it was too sudden and unbelievable. Wei Wei Bai's eyelashes fluttered, and she almost reflexively reached out to press the back of her neck. Chapter 3084. The young man behind her had already left. He walked away with a calm expression. That kiss, just now, had some kind of indescribable morbidity. It was as if it had never existed. Wei Wei Bai turned around and stared at him in disbelief. What are you doing? Fu Yuheng came to his desk, opened his notebook, and looked at her calmly. I need to deal with some work before bed. You could go to bed first to warm up. This sentence was frivolous, but he said it seriously. It didn't seem wretched at all. Wei Wei Bai's fingers were already pressing the back of her neck, as if she was a little surprised that his reaction was so normal. That kiss just now was like a butterfly's wings flapping. It was over in an instant. It didn't seem real. So she pursed her lips, thinking that she was making a fuss over nothing. The girl released her fingers and smiled rebelliously. Let's talk about it when you're in bed. I'm bored waiting on the bed by myself. Fu Yuheng didn't say anything, but turned around and casually pulled out a book from his bookshelf. Then he reached out and threw the book on the table in front of her sofa. Read it if you're bored. Wei Wei Bai raised her eyebrows and glanced at the cover. It seemed to be a textbook. Fu Yuheng had already sat down and started typing. School is about to start. Prepare for the first-year books. Wei Wei Bai frowned. Fu Yuheng said softly, Listen to me. Wei Wei Bai. Then she picked up the book and flipped through it with a tense face. She flipped through the pages noisily. She was completely distracted. Fu Yuheng was not affected at all. About 10 minutes later, he suddenly heard the girl throw the book on the table. I don't understand. Fu Yuheng looked up at her. He was already wearing glasses, and his usually cold and dark eyes were separated by the lenses of his glasses. He actually looked much more refined. His voice was faint. How can you keep up with learning if you don't understand? Didn't you want me to find you a good university? The students in the university are all good. You can't compete with others. The girl smiled indifferently and then said self-deprecatingly, Do I still need to compete with others? I'm already a kept woman. Hearing this, it was a feeling of defiance. Of course, Fu Yuheng understood her mentality. Because he was abandoned by his mother, he gave up on himself. However, she was stubborn and couldn't stand being manipulated and kept by him. Therefore, the rebellious phase became more serious. With this kind of temperament, he would become honest after being thrown into society for a few years. Fu Yuheng glanced sideways at her. The beautiful girl furrowed her delicate brows and glared at the books on the table. Her features were beautiful. Even when she was angry, there was a kind of pure and lovely beauty that was full of vitality. She was a very delicate flower. The thought flashed through his mind. Flowers couldn't withstand any kind of destruction. Why did he want her to sharpen herself? Fu Yuheng realized that he couldn't stand her leaving him, become a member of the mediocre crowd, and then conform to social conventions, get married, and have children. She just had to leave him. Her life was worlds apart from his. The barrier between them was simply insurmountable. Even if they met again in the future, he didn't know what she would become. Become ugly, become old, or become unbearably vulgar. This was not a random thought. It was a real idea formed after seeing too many examples. Fu Yuheng knew that it was a very extravagant thing to let a girl maintain her beauty. She was now in puberty, so her best years were in these few years. If she didn't take good care of it, she would wither. Wei Wei Bai didn't know what was going on in Fu Yuheng's mind. If she knew, she would slap him. You're the one who's withered. Your whole family is withered. He was cursing her to become ugly. Of course, she didn't know. She just felt that the young man's gaze was a little strange, or even sentimental. Sigh. Why was this kept dawdling? Couldn't he be more direct, more violent, and more aggressive? Thinking of this, she coldly rolled her eyes at him. It was a sincere and unfake look of mockery. Address of the full text: https://www. Sashu. Com download of the full text: https://www. Sashu. com//t. Chapter 3085. After Fu Yuheng finished his work, he had a 10-minute remote summary meeting. After turning off the computer, he realized that Wei Wei had fallen asleep. She hugged a pillow and leaned against the wide single-seater sofa. She tilted her head and rubbed the armrest of the sofa, sleeping with her eyes closed. There was a red mark on her delicate cheeks from the pressure of the sofa's armrest. The young man looked at her calmly for a while before getting up. Then he went to get a blanket and carefully covered her body. After he was done, he went to the bathroom to take a shower. When taking a shower, a young man of his age was inevitably impatient. Even if his recent work had consumed more than half of his energy, he couldn't suppress the imagination that was aroused by the girl. This feeling was very foreign to him. Instead, he didn't know what to do to suppress it for a while. Fu Yuheng took a cold shower and looked at the mirror with steam all over his body. In the steamy mirror, he could vaguely see a hot blush on his face. If it wasn't for the cold shower, he could say that the temperature on his skin was brought by the hot water and not him. Recently, his self-control was practically running away. Fu Yuheng laughed at himself. Then he casually put on his pajamas and walked out. The coldness of the air conditioner finally took away a wave of heat from his cold skin. He calmly walked to the sofa and bent down to pick up the girl. The blanket wasn't covered properly and slipped to the ground. The young man's slender fingers also touched the girl's smooth and tender back skin. He held her and stood there for a long time. He didn't know if he was in a daze or feeling the tenderness of the girl in his arms. It wasn't easy for him to come back to his senses. Then, he carried her to the bed. Wei Wei lay on the bed and turned over. She reached out to hug the blanket and slept in a baby's curled-up position. Fu Yuheng stood by the bed and saw her cute sleeping posture. An analysis flashed through his mind. It was said that people who slept in this position were insecure. The young man stared at her quietly for a long time before lying down on the bed. He lay flat on his back. Wei Wei curled up on the other side and slept. There was a gap between them. Fu Yuheng squinted at the light. The girl beside him was still in that insecure posture, not moving at all. It seemed like he could sleep in this position for the entire night. The young man turned his head to look at her. He saw her smooth back and her black hair casually draped over the pillow. Her slender neck and the contours of her face were exceptionally beautiful. He looked at it for a while, then calmly looked away. There was a moment of silence. He couldn't help but stretch out his hand, but halfway through, he retracted his finger. Then he crossed his hands and placed them behind his head as a pillow. He was used to being calm and collected. A moment of wandering thoughts was too fresh for him. He was even a little perplexed. These emotional fluctuations could be, or perhaps, physical problems. For Fu Yuheng, there was no reason for him to lose control of his physiological self-control. He stared at the light for a long time. Suddenly, he felt the person beside him turn over. She didn't flip to his side immediately, but she casually placed her fingers. She placed it on his waist, a little lower. He was stunned for a moment. His body stiffened, but he did not move, nor did he remove her fingers. Just like that, there was a deadlock. Time passed by minute. Fu Yuheng's pillow movements were a little numb, and his fingers began to feel numb like needles. He frowned. He moved his hand away from the back of his head, then turned sideways as if he had accepted his fate. He reached out and held the hand that she placed on his body. Chapter 3086. With this strength, her entire body was already in his arms. Fu Yuheng didn't really do anything. He just hugged her, the soft and fragrant scent of a young girl in the summer room. It was unusually delicious and comfortable. Her skin was slightly cold. The temperature of the air conditioner, coupled with her clothes, was almost equivalent to not wearing anything, so her skin was cool and comfortable to the touch. Fu Yuheng touched it for a while before he realized that his actions were too wretched. He stopped his actions. He looked away with an innocent face. After looking for a while, the feeling of sleepiness finally came. He narrowed his eyes and slowly closed them. Suddenly, the girl in his arms turned over again and rolled away from his arms. He instinctively reached out to pull her back. However, his fingertips seemed to have touched something and pulled. It was released. Fu Yuheng paused and opened his eyes. He saw that the only part of the girl's short singlet that was connected to the belt was torn open. As for the short vest, it also fell to the ground. The girl's back was facing him. Really, there was no cover. He stared at her back and pursed his lips. Suddenly, he felt that the feeling of sleepiness disappeared again. The girl didn't turn over again. Her curled-up posture was unusually cute, but it was so seductive that it was unbearable. Her skin was so good that there were no flaws. Fu Yuheng stared at it for a long time, but he couldn't find anything wrong with it. In the end, he reached out to cover his eyes, rubbed his temples, and muttered in a low voice, "Damn it." At this time, he showed the helplessness of a teenager, although they had signed a contract. But he wasn't a real human trafficker, and his education since he was young didn't teach him to bully women. The law of the jungle was used in the same business circle. The girl was just a little rabbit who accidentally entered his territory. He used tricks on her. In fact, he was no longer a gentleman, so he wanted to do whatever he wanted to her. For a moment, he didn't know how to do it, and he was a little inexperienced with these things. He usually wouldn't move if he didn't have a plan for things that were too inexperienced. But if he didn't move at this time, it would really kill him. Fu Yuheng endured for a while before pulling the blanket over and covering that petite and seductive body. Then, he slowly moved closer and felt the warmth of the girl's back. He reached out and carefully placed his hand on her leg. The skin that his fingertips touched was delicate and soft. Just like that, he hugged her quietly. He was tormented to the point that he did not have a good rest the entire night. When Wei Wei Bai woke up, the young man had already run away. She was the only one left in the bed. She was still covered with a blanket, but her little singlet was folded neatly and placed on the pillow beside her. Yes, it was on Fu Yuheng's pillow. Wei Wei Bai looked up at the small singlet and was speechless. Then, he looked at the favorability. The male lead's favorability is at 45. The favorability was purely based on her appearance. Wei Wei Bai rubbed her chin speechlessly. Yep, youths are indeed passionate. Basically, it didn't do anything. Then, it automatically added the favorability points. Maybe it was because he felt embarrassed not to give her favorable impression after seeing her naked. Sure enough, under the burning eaves of dry firewood, a man and a woman, even if they didn't do anything, they would still have a good impression of each other. Furthermore, it was summer. It was very hot. Just like that, Wei Wei Bai was afraid that this young man would not be able to hold it in and explode in the future. Just like that, he would hold it in until he became a useless turtle. Chapter 3087. It was fine as long as the favorability didn't drop. Fu Yuheng had really become a tortoise spirit. That was his problem. Wei Wei Bai dragged the blanket back to her room to change her clothes. As for the little suspender, she would treat it as a gift for Fu Yuheng with 5 points of favorability. Equals life went on, as usual, day by day. Wei Wei Bai wore all kinds of sexy youthful clothes every day and reported to Fu Yuheng's door every night. Fu Yuheng didn't say anything, but she went too much. The young man started to take out his middle school textbooks and started to tutor her. Of course, her grades were terrible because of her delinquent character. In the beginning, he wanted to teach her university, but when he checked, she probably didn't even graduate from primary school. If she didn't know how to write her name, Fu Yuheng even suspected that she was illiterate. It was just that she was impatient to learn in middle school. In the end, she was impatient and just tore the books and threw them into the trash can. She looked at him angrily. Why? Do you think my education level is not high enough for you? Does your mistress still have to study for a doctorate? You don't make a woman memorize math equations when you're with her, do you? Fu Yuheng reached out and rubbed the middle of his nose. Maybe he felt that teaching a primary school student. It was very difficult. Then he reached out to hold her hand and pulled her into his embrace. He lowered his head and covered her mouth. A long kiss almost suffocated Wei Wei Bai to death. Fu Yuheng kissed her and said softly, "If you don't like to study, we'll learn this." He was speaking too seriously. His deep, dark eyes were filled with burning sparks. The seemingly calm young man seemed to be on the edge. He couldn't hold it in anymore. He wanted to find a reason to do evil to her. Delinquent girl. Coward Wei Wei immediately picked up her pen and muttered unhappily, "Just learn. What's so difficult about it?" Fu Yuheng looked at her slowly and pursed his lips. His expression seemed to be a pity that she was so cowardly. He hugged her to sleep every day. He was used to hugging her. There wouldn't be an embarrassing thing like pushing her off the bed. A beautiful bookshelf, a single man and a single woman, under a cute roof. They were in the same room and were studying hard. This kind of life, Fu Yuheng thought that he would be bored after a long time. But for some reason, he saw a girl walking around him every day, like a stray cat. From time to time, she would scratch him a few times. It brought slight pain. However, he didn't feel uncomfortable at all. There was even a certain feeling in his heart that was faintly stirring. Fu Yuheng was not stupid. He roughly knew what kind of feeling she had. Just because he hadn't experienced it didn't mean that he didn't know what his feelings were. The contract was placed there, but he didn't feel like she had to obey him at all. He just let her accompany him. Just don't run away. His first love, tranquility, Ninja King was still slowly dealing with his restless feelings. Fu Yuheng came back late because he had to deal with a few radical old employees. A trace of fatigue appeared on his face. He took off his clothes and went to take a bath. After taking a shower, he habitually took out his teaching materials. This was the learning summary that he had written during the break in the meeting today. It was for Wei Wei Bai's revision. She just didn't like to study, but she wasn't stupid. She still had some talent in learning. She probably wouldn't be able to catch up in the first year of university. But if he were to revise for her later on, she would probably be able to catch up in the second year. Looking at the time, Fu Yuheng realized that she should be here. Because Wei Wei Bai came around the same time every time, they didn't make an appointment. // Chapter 3088. But there was a tacit understanding. But this time a long time had passed. But there was no rough knocking on the door. Fu Yuheng frowned. Was she not at home? No. If she did not come back, the nanny at home would inform him. Fu Yuheng hesitated for a while before opening the door and walking out. When he reached the second floor, he knocked on the door. There was no response. Fu Yuheng's eyes turned cold. Did she really go out? It was so late. Where was she going? He touched the door handle and found that it was not locked. He pushed the door open without hesitation. In the end, he saw a bulge on the bed in the room. He walked over and found that Wei Wei Bai was curled up in a ball, sleeping with her eyes closed. Her face was pale and her forehead was covered in sweat. She seemed to be in pain. Fu Yuheng frowned and immediately touched her face. He found that her skin was a little cold. Did she catch a cold? He called out softly, "Wei Wei." Wei Wei Bai opened her eyes immediately and glared at him impatiently. "I can't serve you today. Get lost." Fu Yuheng was stunned by this irritable tone that sounded like a dinosaur spitting fire. Then he said softly, "You're sick. I'll call the family doctor." Wei Wei Bai looked irritated. She turned around and continued hugging the blanket. "Is there a need for a doctor when it's my period? It'll be over soon." Her period? Even though Fu Yuheng was smart, he was stunned for 3 seconds before he came back to his senses. Girls who were on their period had different hormone levels. That was why their temper was especially volatile. Fu Yuheng was relieved by her irritable tone just now. He reached out and tugged at her blanket. "Why are you still turning on the air conditioner?" After Fu Yuheng finished speaking, he walked to the table, picked up the remote control of the air conditioner, and raised the temperature. Then he opened the closet, took out a thicker blanket, and wrapped it around her. Wei Wei Bai did not say anything and continued to curl up in the blanket. Although the temperature of the air conditioner was raised, it was still cold. The thicker the blanket, the more comfortable it was. The young man went downstairs to make warm brown sugar water. This was a placebo for menstruation. This thing could only replenish sugar. However, sugar made people happy. At times like this, they felt more comfortable, especially when the sugar water was warm. As for replenishing blood and relieving pain, that was just wishful thinking. When he returned to the room, Wei Wei Bai was already half asleep with her eyes closed. Pain usually lasted for a while. She had probably reached the period when it was not that painful. Fu Yuheng walked to the bedside and squatted down calmly. Drink some water to replenish your sugar. She likes sweet ones, and it likes cold things. This was also one of the causes of menstrual pain. Wei Wei Bai lifted her eyelids. She snorted and said lazily, I don't want to drink anymore. I don't want to get up. Fu Yuheng thought for a moment and nodded. There's no need to get up. Just drink it like this. Then he took out a disposable straw, placed it in the bowl, and placed the end of the straw next to Wei Wei Bai's lips. He said calmly, drink it. Wei Wei Bai finally opened her eyes. She looked at him emotionlessly for a while before opening her mouth and sucking on the straw. Then she drank half of the brown sugar water. After drinking it, she frowned and said disdainfully, I don't want to drink anymore. It's too sweet. She was really hard to please. The young man thought lightly and then put the bowl on the table next to him. Then he said to her, Does it still hurt? Wei Wei Bai replied weakly, It doesn't hurt much. I'm just tired. It was normal to be tired at this time. He was silent for a while before taking out his phone and looking through the information. What medicine do you like? I'll get it for you. He said some medicine for menstrual pain. Wei Wei Bai said lazily, It doesn't hurt much anymore. If I don't take medicine, painkillers are not good for me. Fu Yuheng removed his finger from the phone and let the screen turn black before putting it aside. He turned and went to the bathroom. Not long after, he came out with a basin. There was a clean towel soaking in the warm water. He wrung the towel dry, bent down, and reached out. He pulled the blanket away and wiped her face. Wei Wei Bai was stunned. The warm and clean water made her squint her eyes comfortably. Fu Yuheng carefully used the warm towel to wipe her hands and feet. Wei Wei Bai pursed her lips and suddenly whispered, Don't be so nice to me, Fu Yuheng. Fu Yuheng lowered his head. After warming her feet, he was about to look for a hot water bottle. These words caused him to pause in his actions. Then, the girl's lazy voice sounded a little heartless. Be careful. I'll fall in love with you. Chapter 3089. There was no sincerity in her words at all. When Fu Yuheng heard this, he just covered her face with a warm towel indifferently. His voice was incomparably calm. Be careful that I don't fall in love with you. After saying that, he wiped her face. She almost suffocated to death. The calmer Fu Yuheng was, the more morbid his words sounded. Wei Wei Bai immediately shrank back. She just glared at him without saying anything. He covered her with the blanket and sat on her bed. He reached out and stroked her hair. Go to sleep. Wei Wei Bai felt a little more comfortable. She buried herself in the blanket and impatiently slapped his fingers away. I'm hungry, she said sullenly, willful and hateful. She was like a spoiled brat. Fu Yuheng looked at her for a while before he resigned himself to his fate and went out to get her supper. In the kitchen, the nanny left behind seafood porridge for them. There was a lot of crab meat. Why did this seem a little cold? Although Fu Yuheng didn't really believe in the difference between cold and heat, he thought of Wei Wei Bai's pale face and how she usually wore suspenders and ate ice cream. That was how menstrual pain was faked. He reached out and rolled up his sleeves to reveal his beautiful wrists. Then, he opened the fridge and took out the brown sugar jar. He went to the cabinet where the dry goods were stored and found red dates and other things that were said to be able to replenish blood and qi. Then, he went to get the glutinous rice expressionlessly. These things couldn't be replenished, but it was said to be comfortable, because when a person was cold, sweet things would make them feel comfortable. In Wei Wei Bai's condition, her body showed that she was afraid of the cold. Fu Yuheng calmly used his poor knowledge of menstrual pain to deal with it. She should be able to eat the glutinous rice porridge with red dates and brown sugar. Then, it took him a while to cook the porridge. Wei Wei Bai, who was waiting for supper, was already lying on the bed on the verge of death. Why did it take so long to get supper? Did it take the sun to get it? Or did it circle the earth 3 times? Suddenly, the door opened and Fu Yuheng walked in with supper. Wei Wei Bai was hungry. She sat up obediently and reached out to take the supper. The girl sat on the bed, wrapped in a quilt. He refused to get out of bed. Fu Yuheng felt that her habits were too bad. You can't eat in bed. Wei Wei Bai's face was pale, and she didn't want to move. Then I won't eat. Fu Yuheng, if it weren't for his patience, he would have killed her. Believe it or not, This was the first time Fu Yuheng had experienced such a capricious person. He frowned and continued to pick up the spoon. Then she said, "Sit closer. Don't eat on the bed." Wei Weibai thought about it and agreed. She moved like a snail until she reached the edge of the bed. Just as she was about to reach for the bowl, the youth calmly said, "Open your mouth." Wei Weibai instinctively opened her mouth, and a spoonful of sweet, glutinous rice porridge was stuffed in her mouth. She was stunned for a moment, and her eyes widened a little. The youth calmly lowered his eyelashes and continued to feed her porridge unhurriedly. Wei Weibai pursed her lips and then said vaguely, "It's hot." Fu Yuheng paused, then lowered his head and gently blew on the food. Wei Weibai was satisfied. However, the youth felt that he had become a full-time nanny. Moreover, in a normal sugar daddy contract, shouldn't his little lover serve him? Why did he feel that he had signed back an ancestor? Wei Weibai didn't know what he was thinking. After eating supper, she still had to painstakingly wash up and brush her teeth once before slowly returning to bed to sleep. The youth calmly cleaned up the bowls and chopsticks. Chapter 3090. After washing the dishes, he came to her room with these books. He saw that she was curled up in a ball again, but her face was a little rosy. The strange feeling of serving someone just now also disappeared. As long as she was comfortable, Fu Yuheng didn't react at all. His mentality didn't seem like he was treating a contractual lover. Instead, it was more like he was taking care of her as his little girlfriend. He sat calmly beside her, reading a book. Wei Weibai was sleepy and muttered softly, "What are you reading? You like to study so much." Fu Yuheng looked at the original business book in his hand and said calmly, "Reading before bed. It's very relaxing." Wei Weibai, "Do you know how to read stories? Read them to me." Her tone sounded like she was ordering a servant. Fu Yuheng, who rarely stayed in the same room with girls and was inexperienced in this aspect, felt that something was wrong, but he still indulged her. Then he said a paragraph in a low voice. Wei Weibai, he continued to read. Wei Weibai finally said, "I don't understand." Fu Yuheng, "You haven't learned French?" Wei Weibai, "Fuck." The youth smiled as if he felt that the prank had succeeded. She tugged at the blanket again. "Stop reading. Go back to your room and sleep. While my relatives are here, you can't do anything. Even if no relatives were here." He didn't seem to do anything to her. Fu Yuheng continued to flip the book indifferently and said perfunctorily, "I'll leave when you're asleep." Wei Weibai believed him, and then she slept peacefully. During this period of time, it wasn't only the youth who had gotten used to sleeping with her. She actually didn't have much defense against him anymore. In the quiet night, under the dim yellow light, the youth absent-mindedly read for a while before putting the book on the table. Then he lay down because she had a pillow on the bed. So he squeezed it. The pillow was still enough for two people to sleep, as long as they hugged each other. He reached out and pulled her into his arms. Then he calmly closed his eyes and began to sleep. Sure enough, with a pillow, the quality of his sleep was restored. The girl seemed to have felt his warmth as well. She rubbed against him and squeezed closer until her back was pressed against his chest. Only then was she satisfied. Wei Weibai was having a good time at Fu Yuheng's house. She was just waiting for the right time to pay for it with her body. Summer vacation was almost over. Even the firewood hadn't started burning yet. He really had to admire Fu Yuheng for being polite and well-mannered. The contract had been signed for a long time. Why aren't the meat dishes served yet? Of course, based on her character, she wouldn't pounce on him head-on. Just like that, there was a deadlock. Wei Weibai had just finished her ice cream when she heard the system say, "The male lead has been plotting recently." Wei Weibai was searching for canned fruit in the fridge. She found a can of yellow peaches. The taste was not bad. After opening it, she picked up a fork and began to eat. What kind of trap? Life was too good. She had already gained 0.5 kilograms. She had to eat some fruits to reduce her weight. The system said some of the employees that he fired were bold enough to kidnap and kill the only successor of the Fu family. They wanted to regain control of the company. Early on, something happened to Fu Yuheng's family. The old man couldn't handle it alone, so he promoted a group of elites to help manage the company. In the end, it was easier to invite the devil and then to send him away. When Fu Yuheng started to have the ability to manage the company, He found that a lot of power was firmly controlled by this group of people. These 2 years, Fu Yuheng had basically been doing things that offended people. Chapter 3091. The so-called reform was to take back the power of their own family from the hands of outsiders. They had offended too many people in the past 2 years. Fu Yuheng was too young, his methods were too fierce, and his temperament showed the ruthlessness of an old man. This led to this group of people knowing that after Fu Yuheng grew up for a few more years, there would be nothing for them to do. Especially when they were forced to retire by Fu Yuheng, their hatred deepened. Old Master Fu was even more ruthless, directly pushing Fu Yuheng out to handle everything by himself. He thought he was old. Fu Yuheng's father was a pile of mud. As a result, at the old master's age, to cultivate a successor, he could only use extreme methods. Like an old eagle pushing a young eagle, hating him for pushing him off the cliff, letting him fly by himself. Fortunately, Fu Yuheng's wings were strong, and he flew quite well. Wei Bai looked at the information sent by the system. The system added, "This kidnapping and killing is to get rid of the male lead, so that the old master has no successor and can only continue to rely on them." Wei Bai nodded. So Fu Yuheng beat them at their own game? The system said, "Can this plan be used?" Wei Bai touched her face, then continued to eat the yellow peach, saying lazily, "We'll talk about it later. I'll see if there's a breakthrough point." Fu Yuheng already knew about this plot. There must be various ways to deal with it. If it was another way, there would be no breakthrough point. But if it was a trick of self-injury, then she would have a chance. The breakthrough time was free. Wei Bai did not have such a pressing mentality. After all these planes, she had accumulated experience. One of them was that if time was long enough, they could get along with each other casually. There was no need to be desperate. After all, it was tiring to be desperate. The super old, greasy, salted fish conqueror sighed faintly, then continued to eat snacks. Halfway through, she heard the system roar. "Ah, the male lead is planning to be kidnapped. He's going to play the trick of self-injury." Wei Bai almost choked to death on a yellow peach. She put down the can, then stood up, put on the sunscreen, and said, "Then I'll go suffer with him immediately." If he didn't suffer, how could his favorability suddenly increase? His summer vacation was coming to an end, and his dry days were over. If he started going to school, he would have less contact with them. He had to increase his favorability before the summer break. Bai Wei pondered as she carried her small bag and stepped out in her sandals. She glanced at the map given by the system. Because they weren't sure about places that were too far away, the map was very simple. There was only a general address. Wei Bai bought a strawberry ice cream and ate it as she walked. When he reached the street where Fu Yuheng was, he still hadn't found Fu Yuheng. Then, he saw a yellow-haired brat running overexcitedly. Wei, I haven't seen you for a long time." Wei Bai stopped in her tracks. "Who is this?" The system said, "A friend of the original host, a fair-weather friend. In the past, the original owner was a delinquent girl. The people she knew were all bad at school, playful, and all kinds of bad friends. Although he didn't do anything terrible, he wasn't a good student either." Wei Bai nodded and said perfunctorily, "Yeah, the weather is hot recently. My parents don't let me go out, afraid that I'll get a heat stroke." The yellow-haired brat immediately laughed. "Why did you change so much? You even listened to your parents. Not cool at all. We're going to the KTV tonight. You should come too." Bai Wei was just about to smile and say she wouldn't go, but she heard the system say, "The male lead is here. He's in the car." To make it easier for you to read next time, you can click the button at the bottom to record this reading record. Chapter 3092. Wei Bai tilted her head and waited for the car to slowly drive over. Suddenly, she revealed an incomparably sweet smile. "Let's go together. I miss the days when I sang and danced with you." That smile and that joyful tone of voice, it gave people a feeling of love. Listening to it made their ears tingle. The car suddenly stopped. Originally, the people who saw the girl sitting in the car ignored her and just walked over. After all, the plan had already started and there was no turning back. The young man sat in the back seat and looked up coldly. The window was half open. He saw the girl eating Tion's strawberry ice cream and licking the strawberries with the tip of her tongue. She was delicate and youthful. And in front of her, a yellow-haired boy looked at her in a daze. The driver said, "We have to go, young master." Fu Yuheng's eyelashes trembled. His fingers clenched slightly. His fingertips pierced his flesh. It didn't hurt, but made him sober. "Yes, let's go." However, he heard the girl's happy voice beside the car. "I'm not going home tonight. Let's play all night. If it's too late, I'll go to your house for the night." As soon as this sentence came out, the young man's fingertips clenched tightly. His short and round fingernails pierced into his flesh. It hurt. The young man lowered his eyes. It was cold to the bone. He asked the driver, "Are they here?" The driver lowered his head and used a wireless communication tool to communicate with someone for a while. "There's still about 10 minutes. Fu Yuheng narrowed his eyes and nodded. Then, he opened the car door without hesitation. Wei Bai was playing with the yellow-haired boy. "Remember to buy me a new toothbrush. I can use it when I wake up tomorrow morning. The towel doesn't matter. I can use yours." The yellow-haired boy was dizzy and wanted to refuse. He was 1 year away from adulthood. If he dyed his hair and didn't study, his parents would beat him to death. If he dared to bring a girl home, they would beat him to death without explanation. Although he liked Wei Bai very much, he couldn't bring her home. If he didn't bring her home, he could still take advantage of her. Wei Bai was so gullible. After bullying her, he didn't need to take responsibility. The yellow-haired boy immediately smiled and reached out to hold Wei Bai's hand. "Then let's go quickly." Just as he stretched out his hand, little yellow feather suddenly felt something tighten at the back of his neck. A huge force grabbed his collar and pulled him back. Little yellow feather's tongue was stuck out. His eyes widened in horror, and in the next moment, he was thrown to the ground by this force. Little yellow feather was dumbfounded. He felt like his neck was about to break. He stretched out his hands to cover the back of his neck and looked up in shock. Then he saw a handsome and cold youth. His cold eyes were emotionless. He walked over, extended his long leg, and kicked the youth's waist. This caused little yellow feather to roll on the ground in pain. Fu Yuheng calmly rolled down his sleeves and said, "Who allowed you to touch her?" Little yellow hair was so scared that he almost peed himself. Where did this killing god come from? He was simply not giving anyone a way out. He hurriedly wailed and howled, "Big brother, I didn't touch her." Fu Yuheng calmly walked over and then squatted down. His handsome face was covered with a layer of frightening gloominess. His tone was calm, but his words were enough to scare someone to death. "The next time I see you, I'll break your arms and legs." Little yellow feather cried and immediately ran away while crying. He was afraid that if he ran too slowly, his arms and legs would be broken. The youth with the cold eyes then slowly stood up, as if the person who threatened him was someone else. Wei Bai held the ice cream in her hand and slowly blinked, as if she was scared silly. Fu Yuheng reached out and grabbed her arm. He dragged her forcefully and then stuffed her into the car. The chauffeur immediately started driving. The youth was also silent and did not say anything. Only then did Wei Bai dare to secretly take a bite of the ice cream that was about to melt. However, she heard him ask softly, "Do you like that guy just now?" Wei Bai was stunned. This was a death sentence question. She immediately laughed heartlessly and said, "How could that be? Don't I like you the most? Big brother." This sentence of liking was not sincere at all. Fu Yuheng slowly turned his head, his beautiful eyes suppressing a gloom. He laughed coldly. "The next time you dare to seduce others, I'll break your legs so that you won't be able to go out anymore." This sentence was frighteningly serious. It did not seem like a joke at all. // for the convenience of your next reading, you can click on the Save button. Chapter 3093. Wei Bai seemed to be frightened. She looked at him blankly and then ate the last strawberry on the ice cream. It wouldn't be cold if she didn't eat it. The strawberry tasted good. She licked the corner of her lips. As for the little cutie Fu's threat, what was the difference between it and the usual saying that the weather was hot today? Except that her eyes were wide open. There didn't seem to be any difference. Big Boss Wei was very calm inside. If you have the guts, go ahead and become black. Even if you become black as charcoal, she wouldn't be afraid. Of course, she still had show her character, so she glanced sideways and smiled coldly. Got it. There was no sincerity and a perfunctory attitude. Fu Yuheng's expression was still calm, but the gloominess in his eyes was still there. He turned his face, his beautiful eyes half closed, so cold that it was frightening. Wei Wei Bai finished the ice cream in her hand and went to wipe her hands like a child without a care in the world. She lowered her head, completely ignoring the emotions of the young man beside her. Suddenly, the person beside her raised his hand, pinched her chin, and forced her to look up. Wei Wei Bai's eyes were a little confused. Fu Yuheng looked at her calmly for a while, then said in a low voice, "If you don't like it, don't tease people like that." When he hit that little yellow hair just now, she didn't panic at all, nor did she feel sorry for him. She didn't even have the intention to stop him. Her behavior was too frivolous. There was no sense of boundaries. If she met a bigoted person, she would be strangled to death sooner or later. Wei Wei Bai's eyelashes fluttered, and she suddenly grabbed his wrist, saying angrily, "Can you not pinch my chin?" Fu Yuheng saw her stupid and naive look. He couldn't help but narrow his eyes, but he didn't move his hand from her wrist. Finally, the little girl was scared. She pursed her lips, and there was a trace of fear in her eyes. Then her voice softened. "Got it, I won't do it again." This sentence was different from the perfunctory one just now. It was more of a grievance of being oppressed by the strong and having no choice but to accept threats. Fu Yuheng looked at her coldly for a while, then suddenly released his fingers, raised his wrist, and looked at his watch. A few minutes had passed. The other party was about to meet his opponent. He said coldly to the driver, "Stop the car." He didn't have time to send her home. She could only ask her to get off the car halfway. As an outsider, she couldn't get involved in today's kidnapping. The best thing to do just now was to ignore her. This way, she wouldn't be in any danger at all. But to see her smiling sweetly at someone, even going home with a boy for the night, his mind buzzed. Logic and reason had all lost to the killing intent in that instant. He wanted to make little yellow hair completely disappear from this world. If it wasn't for Li Meng's cold stare from the beginning to the end, watching him hit people, he reckoned that a few of little yellow hair's bones would be broken by his kick. In the past, he had always mocked others for being blinded by foolish anger. He had done a lot of things that he would never have done if he was calm. In the end, when it was his turn, only then did he realize that stupid things could be done so easily. Wei Wei Bai's eyes lit up. "Are you busy? Then put me down immediately. I'm in the way." Would anyone praise themselves like that? Fu Yuheng saw how happy she was and how eager she was to get off the car. The young man's thin lips couldn't help but curl up into a cold smile. But this matter was too important, and his life was in danger. He would settle the score with her when the matter was over. So he didn't stop her and started to park the car. / to facilitate the next reading, you can click on Chapter 3094. However, Wei Wei Bai said, "Uncle Driver, stop at the shadowy place in front. The weather is so hot. I will get heat stroke if I expose myself to the scorching sun." The driver was very nervous and planned to stop the car directly. However, Fu Yuheng did not say anything and could only continue driving. The shadow of the huge building was about to reach them. The driver suddenly heard a hurried voice coming from his earpiece. His pupils constricted, and he immediately said to Fu Yuheng, "It's here." Fu Yuheng frowned, and almost without hesitation, he reached out and grabbed Wei Wei Bai's arm, pulled her into his arms, and shouted, "Step on the accelerator." But it was too late. A few cars appeared out of nowhere and sped towards them from all directions. A car crashed into the front of Fu Yuheng's car with a suicidal posture. A violent collision. The people in the car were shocked. The girl in Fu Yuheng's arms gasped in horror. From those black cars, a dozen to 20 tall masked men holding iron hammers quickly jumped down from those black cars. They directly smashed the window of the back seat where Fu Yuheng was sitting and professionally opened the door. They took out a terrifyingly sharp knife. "Get down." To make Fu Yuheng afraid, the criminal saw the girl in his arms and stabbed her without thinking. He planned to kill the girl, to deter Fu Yuheng. As for who the girl was and what the impact of her death was, it did not matter to them, because their target was only Fu Yuheng. Wei Wei Bai was tightly pressed in the youth's arms. She resisted the impact of the impact and had her back to the car door. So when the dagger was sent to her back, there was no chance of dodging at all. The tip of the knife was about to touch the girl's thin sunscreen jacket. In the next moment, Fu Yuheng reached out fiercely. At the critical moment, his fingers grabbed the criminal's dagger. Blood dripped from his palms. The criminal trembled. They were paid to do things. The higher-ups needed a complete Fu Yuheng. If he was injured, it would not be easy to get money. He immediately let go because it was in time. Fu Yuheng's wound was not deep. It was just a scratch. The blood fell on the girl's neck, and the chill made her shiver. Fu Yuheng frowned and said to the criminals, "I'll go with you." With that said, he was about to push her away. However, he found that he couldn't push it away. She was so scared that she hugged his waist tightly with both hands. Due to the urgency of the situation, the criminal did not give Fu Yuheng any time to react. He directly grabbed Fu Yuheng's arm and dragged him outside. However, Wei Bai was dragging his waist with all her might. Just like that, the two of them were dragged to the enemy's car like conjoined dolls. If Fu Yuheng had been able to remain calm in the beginning, when Wei Bai followed him into the car, he couldn't help but frown. Both of them were covered with a black cover. Because Wei Bai was hugging the boy too tightly and time was tight, no one tried to pull her away. Therefore, she continued to curl up in Fu Yuheng's arms. The young man was also afraid that something would happen to her. He reached out and pressed her back, protecting her in his arms. He sensed that she was afraid. His body kept trembling. The little girl had never seen such a big scene. Therefore, she was frightened for a moment. He felt that it was normal, but she shouldn't have hugged him so tightly just now. Shouldn't a normal person let go of him and immediately shrink to the other side of the car? Perhaps she was too scared and thought that his arms were the safest place? When this thought appeared, Fu Yuheng couldn't help but purse his lips. / at the bottom to record this reading record. Chapter 3095. He didn't really care about her shit-stirring behavior anymore. Suddenly, he heard Wei Bai say softly, her voice trembling, "Fu Yuheng, are you okay?" Her voice was too soft, like a breath blowing against his neck. He couldn't hear anything clearly, but Fu Yuheng understood what he meant. He was silent for a while before replying in a low voice, "I'm fine." The black cover was made of breathable, thin cotton cloth. It was just to prevent them from seeing the road, not to suffocate them. Their voices could also be heard. The girl in his arms heaved a sigh of relief and said aggrievedly, "You scare me to death." Fu Yuheng couldn't help but mock. "You were so scared that you kept holding on to me and got tied up together?" Her actions just now were so stupid that it gave him a headache. Wei Bai was stunned, and then she didn't say anything. It was as if she knew that she was wrong. Fu Yuheng didn't blame her again. After all, it was natural for her to be scared for a moment. It was still his fault. He shouldn't have let her get into the car because of anger, even after beating up the blonde. Then leaving her where she was the right thing to do. But losing his mind made him lose his judgment. He let this mistake hatch successfully. When the car stopped, the criminals opened the door and wanted to pull them down. Wei Bai was pulled away from his arms, and the black cover was also pulled away. Her fingers were still holding the youth's arm tightly. She had no intention of relaxing at all. This was an abandoned hospital. It was unusually eerie and terrifying. But most people wouldn't think that there was someone hiding here. Fu Yuheng's expression was indifferent as he glanced at those people. None of them showed their true faces. This meant that the group of people who gave the order hadn't given the order to kill the hostage. So no one took the risk of exposing themselves. He glanced at the hospital again before following in. From the beginning to the end, he was one step ahead and protected the girl who was holding his hand behind him. The two of them were locked in an abandoned ward. The white walls of the ward had begun to peel off. The bed was made of iron, and there was no bedding. The ruffians locked the door from the outside with a big iron chain. Wei Bai couldn't help but purse her lips as she listened to the clanking of the chains. She lowered her head and her eyes turned red. Fu Yuheng glanced at her and pulled her to the bedside. Then, he took out a handkerchief from his pocket and wiped the bed. He sat her down on the bed. Then he lowered his head and covered her forehead with his hand. His dark eyes stared at her. His voice was slightly hoarse. "Don't be afraid. I'm here." Wei Bai raised her red eyes and looked at him. She sniffled and said in a hoarse voice, Did I cause you any trouble? Fu Yuheng looked at her pitiful eyes and narrowed his eyes. You've just realized that your ability to deal with crises is too poor. Their target is me, but you're good. You brought yourself along. Buy one, get one free? Wei Wei Bai fell silent. Then she turned her face, her eyelashes trembling slightly. I wanted to let go of you immediately, but when I thought of you being kidnapped, I was so scared that I didn't dare to let go. I thought that this would delay your capture. This sentence made her frown. You're stupid. The act of hugging you will only cause you more trouble. Ru can save you. Fu Yuheng thought that she was just scared and didn't know how to let go. He didn't expect this answer. His calm expression had a hint of sluggishness. Although it was only for a moment, it was unusually rare. Fu Yuheng thought for a moment before sitting beside her. He reached out and put his arm around her shoulders, bringing her into his embrace. / Chapter 30-96. Then he lowered his eyes and said in a low voice, I thought you hated me. Wei Wei Bai replied in a muffled voice, I hate you. Fu Yuheng, hate me so much that you want to save me? Wei Wei Bai couldn't say anything for a while, so she could only repeat, I hate you. Fu Yuheng couldn't help but smile. Then he sighed. They were so silly. Then he lowered his head and kissed her cheek. The boy's voice was soft and gentle. I know you hate me. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 50. There was no signal in this hospital, which was why they weren't searched. They couldn't make a call. Fu Yuheng told Wei Wei Bai, who was desperately calling the police, that there was a signal jammer here. The girl looked at him blankly. Why does it seem like a movie? Fu Yuheng pondered for a moment before nodding slowly. To a certain extent, it is indeed a movie. He knew that there was a kidnapping activity, so deliberately being kidnapped to lure the snake out of its hole was a kind of acting method. After the kidnapping, the other side acted like they wanted money, but they planned to kill the hostage as soon as they got the money, so that the Fu family would lose their successor, so that they could return to the company. This was also an act. He just didn't know who acted better. The criminal had been here once and placed 2 bowls of instant noodles on the abandoned metal table. It seemed that the ransom was still being negotiated, so it would take a long time. Giving them instant noodles was to not let them starve to death. When the criminal was about to leave, Wei Wei Bai suddenly called out to him, Big brother, can you give me medical bandages? And disinfectant. The bandit fiercely turned his head around. The 2 eye holes in his mask revealed a terrifying look of ruthlessness. What do you want this for? Wei Wei Bai was scared, her fingers clutching the clothes of the boy beside her. Then she still straightened her little neck and shouted, Didn't you want a lot of ransom? Your vault is damaged with a knife. If you don't treat the tetanus in time and die, you won't have any money. Because she was too scared, she shouted out loud. The criminal was stunned by the roar. Wei Wei Bai immediately followed up with another attack. Also, just treat it as a purchase. You can increase the ransom, add the money for the drugs, and add the money for the instant noodles. Wouldn't you be able to earn more? This reason was too strong. Fu Yuheng raised his eyebrows and looked at her indifferently. When he heard what she said, he couldn't help but laugh. He was amused. This was the first time he could negotiate with a criminal like this. He actually used ransom money to buy something from the criminal. The gangster was fooled into a daze. In the end, he really did throw in an expired bandage and a bottle of disinfectant that was about to expire. It might have been found in an abandoned hospital. Wei Wei Bai took the bandage and immediately frowned at Fu Yuheng. Open your fingers. He was silent for a while before he slowly spread out his injured hand. Flesh rotted out of the cut skin and blood was still flowing out. However, there wasn't much blood, and he was afraid of scaring her, so he kept rubbing the blood on his black pants. As a result, his wound became much more serious. His hand was full of bright red blood. Wei Wei Bai looked at him, and tears welled up in her eyes. She gritted her teeth and immediately began to wipe the blood off him with a bandage. She carefully wiped and complained in a hoarse voice, Why do you have to go to this extent for a worthless lover? What if your fingers are crippled? Fu Yuheng saw her drooping eyelashes trembling slightly. Was this girl really made of water? She could really cry at the slightest thing. He looked at his wound indifferently. I know what to do. I won't be crippled. When he said this, he saw the girl in front of him look up fiercely. The mist in her eyes was replaced by a clear light. It was out of anger. Don't do this in the future. I'm not grateful to you. She gritted her teeth and lowered her head to wipe him with disinfectant. Her voice couldn't help but soften. It hurts a lot. Bear with it. It was as cute as coaxing a child. Fu Yuheng stared at her silently, and a smile slowly appeared in his dark eyes. Then he responded in a low voice. When I see you, I don't feel much pain. Maybe it's a little itchy. His heart itched. /crossover system. Adonis, come over here. Chapter 30-97. Instant noodles were spicy. For some reason, Wei Wei Bai's taste buds didn't like spicy food. When she ate the first mouthful of instant noodles, she was stunned and felt that the tip of her tongue was about to explode. But she was also very hungry, so she ate the second mouthful with difficulty. Then her eyes turned red. It was red from the spiciness. She glanced at the packaging outside the instant noodles bucket. Super spicy beef, pickled vegetable noodles. God, you're special grade. Why did a pervert like such spicy food? Fu Yuheng looked like an elegant young master, but he wasn't picky about food at all. Even when she was eating the instant noodles with a disposable fork, she was slow and elegant. He made the super spicy instant noodles feel like a 5-star meal. He was just short of wearing a suit and tie. The corners of her mouth twitched. The system had already checked most of it. Just now, she went through the information given by the system. She found that this guy was a wolf in sheep's clothing. Although it was a kidnapping, there were few of his people in the kidnapping to cooperate with this kidnapping. Fu Yuheng had been busy for an entire week. He was afraid that if any step was not true, the planners would become vigilant. Eating instant noodles was also a way to let the other party let down their guard. After all, who would see a hostage eating a feast, right? Although she knew that if Fu Yuheng gave the order, his people might still be able to get some good food. But this guy probably wouldn't even make such a small mistake. Wei Wei Bai thought it through and could only continue. She tried her best to stuff the instant noodles into her mouth. She tried her best not to touch the soup. It was still spicy. Suddenly, a hand took away the instant noodles in front of her. Wei Wei Bai still had half a piece of noodles in her mouth. It hung in the air, and her round black eyes were filled with tears from the spiciness. She looked at her noodles pitifully. After it was taken away by the youth, she watched as he slowly picked up her noodles with a fork, rolled them up, and brought them to his beautiful lips. With one bite, he ate them. He ate. She quickly stuffed the noodles into her mouth. It was so spicy that she teared up again. Then, she hurriedly looked at Fu Yuheng's instant noodles bucket. It was gone. Even the soup was left. This guy could actually eat spicy food without batting an eyelid. Most importantly, he actually snatched her food and ate it himself. This guy's heart was actually so black. In such a starving situation, the goal was to rob her of her only source of food. Then he would eat it in front of her. What kind of fucking selfishness was that? Fu Yuheng saw her staring at him. He continued to eat the noodles with a calm expression. When he finished the soup, he felt that he should explain himself. So he said slowly, I can see that you're afraid of spicy food. You'd better not eat it, lest you get diarrhea. Wei Wei Bai, Fu Yuheng was afraid that she did not understand. There is no bathroom in the abandoned ward, and there is no extra water. If you have diarrhea, you can only go to the corner. You probably won't like it. It was a plausible explanation. He had successfully made the starving Wei Wei Bai lose all her appetite. Fu Yuheng could actually eat spicy instant noodles without batting an eyelid and discuss the problem of diarrhea with her. Wei Wei Bai felt that this guy, who won't succeed, his opponents would be committing a sin if they met him. Wei Wei Bai touched her nose and felt disgusted. Then she obediently retracted her feet on the iron bed, hugged her legs with both hands, and waited for Fu Yuheng with reddened eyes. Big Boss Fu's face was calm as he drank the last bit of soup. // Chapter 3098. Wei Wei Bai couldn't help but say, You rarely eat this. Will you have diarrhea if you eat too much? Fu Yuheng put the fork and paper bucket of instant noodles on the table and tidied them up. He said calmly, I've eaten it before. I'm used to it. Wei Wei Bai looked at him in confusion, as if she didn't understand why he was used to eating this thing. Fu Yuheng saw that the girl's eyes were red, and there was a hint of innocent curiosity in them. She was like a rabbit that popped out of a hole. She was looking at him silently, with pitiful eyes. His heart softened, and he couldn't help but explain, "I left my family's company at the age of 15 to work on my own. In the beginning, to succeed in the project, I ate and lived with the employees. I even stayed up all night in the company and often ate instant noodles for supper. Because the old master was not satisfied with him running away. He cut off his funds and didn't allow him to have any privileges. Even his bank cards were frozen. That year, he basically understood what it meant to be inconvenient. For example, when the company's renovation was not complete, he slept in the company directly. He would just pull a cardboard under his body and then sleep with a blanket that cost 9 yuan online. He ate too much instant noodles and takeout. He also knew which brands were better and had a better investment future. These were only the first year. In the next few years, his performance improved and his standard of living rose sharply. When Wei Wei Bai heard him say this, the mist in her eyes gradually dissipated and a clear light appeared. Fu Yuheng saw her gaze and was slightly stunned. He was familiar with this gaze. His employees and business partners would often look at him with this kind of excited gaze, because he led them and succeeded in achieving great results. It was just a look of worship. It was just that they were not as pure and cute as the girl in front of him, or even loyal. She couldn't help but whisper, "You're quite amazing." Fu Yuheng looked at her lightly. His thin lips curled slightly, but he was not modest. The girl lowered her eyes. "Compared to you, I'm really not good at anything." Fu Yuheng said calmly, "You're very amazing. Don't underestimate yourself." Wei Wei Bai's eyes immediately lit up, and she said happily, "How am I amazing?" Fu Yuheng, don't take my words too seriously. However, she did have her own strengths. For example, she could make his eyes follow her everywhere, make him angry, make way for me, or even jealousy. Once this feeling surged up, it was almost impossible to suppress. Fu Yuheng felt like she was his first love. The belated young man stared at her blankly for a while before reaching out and patting her head. "You're the best when it comes to provoking me." It made him upset. She was the first. Wasn't that impressive? Ding! The male lead's favorability is at 55. When Wei Wei Bai saw that the male lead had reluctantly opened his eyes, she finally realized that his feelings for her were not that of a contracted lover. Naturally, his favorability towards him increased a little. The young and inexperienced emotions of a youth would not be able to withstand any disaster. But she still liked him. Even so, she was not enlightened. Therefore, her expression became sluggish. Suddenly, like an evil dragon, she glared at him fiercely. "Umph, I'm the first to make you angry. Be careful, don't die from anger." Fu Yuheng smiled. His dark eyes were filled with joy. His finger lightly fell on the tip of her nose. Her nose was still a little red from eating spicy food. His finger lightly rubbed against the tip of her nose. This was a cute and intimate action. "Hungry?" /T. Chapter 3099. He asked softly. Wei Wei Bai narrowed her eyes and snorted, but she didn't answer. However, a slight rumbling sound came from her stomach. This was awkward. Fu Yuheng couldn't help but smile even more. "Why, don't you call me brother? I'll get someone to make you some delicious food." Wei Wei Bai sneered. "You're a hostage now. Who listens to you?" Fu Yuheng, trust me. Wei Wei Bai thought for a while before reluctantly saying, "Brother, I'm hungry." She was completely insincere. She didn't even use a word when calling him. Fu Yuheng wasn't picky. He got off the bed and walked to the door. Wei Wei Bai immediately called out to him, "Don't feed me. I'm not hungry." Fu Yuheng ignored her and knocked on the door. The criminal immediately responded fiercely, "What do you want?" Fu Yuheng said indifferently, "Do you want to earn money?" The criminal sneered, "Aren't you just our money?" Fu Yuheng, the ransom is still being negotiated. How can money that hasn't been received be considered money? I have a car with me. I'll tell you the password. You can get it immediately. The criminal was stunned and didn't respond. Fu Yuheng's face was calm, and his voice was emotionless. It was as if he was talking about a trivial matter. "There's about a few million in the card. You guys are fast enough and your methods are professional enough. You should be able to safely transfer it out by tonight." Fu Yuheng's voice darkened as he said this. There was even a hint of magnetism. It was so pleasant that it could bewitch people. But you have to think carefully. Before the ransom is negotiated, you can't torture me. If I don't tell you the password, you won't be able to take out the money in the card. That was indeed the case. The criminal was tempted. What do you want to do? Fu Yuheng, give me a better environment. Also, I want a higher standard for dinner. As for how high, you've checked my information. You can order food wherever I eat. The criminal hesitated for a while before saying, give me the card. Fu Yuheng nodded and took out his wallet from his jacket. After taking out his card, he took it out. At the same time, he also took a stack of $100 bills and put them on the ground together with the card and pushed them out through the gap. After pushing it out, Fu Yuheng said, by the way, remember to order an extra supper. We have a habit of eating supper. Master Fu did not look like a bandit at all. It felt like he was staying in a hotel and ordering the waiters around. He said calmly, when the matter is settled, I will tell you the password. After saying that, he deliberately added another infuriating sentence. You don't have to worry about me going back on my word. After all, this is just a small amount of money. The cash is for your tea. Bandit, why do I feel like I've been attacked? After finishing his business, Fu Yuheng calmly tidied up his clothes and looked at the girl on the bed. She stared at him blankly, her eyes full of soft little stars. It was a little star of worship. He couldn't help but smile. He walked over and ruffled her hair. Don't look at me like that, or I'll kiss you. Wei Bai blushed and turned her head. She snorted, rogue. They changed to a better abandoned ward. It was obviously a VIP ward. It was much cleaner. There was even a clean bedding, a thermos of hot water, and 2 brand new cups. The most important thing was the dishes that they had spent millions on. The dishes were spread out on 2 abandoned tables. Wei Bai ate while listening to Fu Yuheng tell the bandit the password. Crossover system, Adonis, come here, /crossover system, Adonis, come here, / crossover system, Adonis, come here. Crossover system, Adonis, come here. Crossover system, Adonis, come here. Chapter 3100. This wastrel. Sooner or later he'll lose all his assets. Damn it, $1 million dinner, my heart hurts. Eat more, or else it'll be a waste of money. After eating until she was full, she felt that the life of a kidnapper was not bad. Fu Yuheng did not eat much. He just drank a few drinks and waited until she was full. He asked softly, you have a big heart. What if the kidnapper poisons this table of food? Although Wei Bai was full, she still persevered and wanted to eat the last dessert. Hearing this, she did not know if she should spit out the fruit in her mouth. Her cheeks were puffed up like a hamster stealing food. Fu Yuheng laughed. I'm just kidding. If I'm poisoned to death, there won't be any ransom. Wei Bai swallowed the fruit. Then it's fine if I'm poisoned to death? Fu Yuheng, you're worthless to them. Wei Bai, Fu Yuheng calmly supported his shin with his hand. But you're worth a lot to me. Wei Bai, yo, this young man is really good at flirting with girls. So flirtatious. Fu Yuheng saw her blushing face. He felt that his attitude was too revealing. Maybe it was because the contrast was too big that it scared her. Because she was kidnapped, the time passed by in torment. Especially when she had eaten supper and had nothing to do, Wei Bai felt that the night was long. The system had finished knitting the small hat, the big hat, and was embroidering. Since she had nothing to do recently, she wanted to pick up some embroidery jobs. After all, she could not just sit around and eat until she ran out of money. The income from the side accounts had increased a lot recently. She wondered if she had gotten familiar with digging holes. It listened to Wei Bai chatter. I'm bored. I want to see Ultraman fight the little monsters. The system was about to search. Then it heard her say, but I can't watch. After all, Fu Yuheng is very sensitive. He'll notice if I'm spacing out for too long. The system said, then play with him and you won't be bored. Wei Bai was so bored that she secretly yawned, not daring to let Fu Yuheng see it. He could remain so calm because the plan was in his hands. She couldn't. She was now a pitiful, innocent, and beautiful girl. It wouldn't make sense if he wasn't afraid or even felt sleepy. So she looked up and stole a glance at Fu Yuheng, who was sitting by the bed and deep in thought. He glanced at the time. as if he was predicting whether the ransom had been successfully negotiated. Occasionally, there would be shadows of criminals wandering outside the window. He glanced at her and immediately turned to look at Wei Wei Bai. Sure enough, he found a little girl wrapped in a quilt, squatting on the bed and staring at him. His eyes were black and bright, like some kind of pitiful little animal that was frightened. It was unspeakably adorable. He asked someone to send a feast and return the room. It was also a way to distract himself, so that she wouldn't focus on the kidnapping. After all, he didn't need to be afraid. She wasn't afraid, but that was impossible. Fu Yuheng was about to get up and comfort her, but he saw Wei Wei Bai suddenly jump up, wrapped in a quilt, and ran to the window. She closed all the curtains, then ran to the bed, her face red from the intense exercise. Fu Yuheng. Her voice was trembling. Will we be killed? Fu Yuheng was silent for a while, and was about to say no, but he heard her say with certainty, what if they kill us? This might be our last night. He pursed his lips, then said, won't. His sentence was cut off by the girl's sudden kiss. She pulled the quilt over her body and covered his head. This intense kiss was accompanied by ambiguous gasps under the quilt. After a while, her trembling voice came out from under the quilt. The girl's voice was full of unwavering drive. If we're going to die tomorrow, you can have me, Fu Yuheng. Chapter 3101. The girl's breath had never been so strong before. It was as if she was carrying a sweet knife. The tip of the knife moved forward and stabbed into Fu Yuheng's mind. It made his mind blank for a few seconds. The ambiguous breath and the sticky sweetness. The girl sat directly on his body and pressed against his body. The white sheet wrapped them in a sealed environment. They were each other's breath. Her kiss was not even awkward. The sweet tip of her tongue pried open his lips and teeth. Like a seductive kitten, she used the tip of her sweet tongue to tempt people to fall into her pink hell. He let her do whatever she wanted. The corners of Wei Wei Bai's eyes were red under her eyelashes. Her eyes were like moist gems. There was a kind of reckless madness in the light. She kissed him. She whispered, Fu Yuheng, you like me, right? Anyway, there is no tomorrow. Why don't you get me tonight? This sentence was simply like a demon tempting a young angel. Although Fu Yuheng was not an angel, but at this moment, he looked like a fool. He was indeed stupider than an angel. The white sheet was still translucent. Under the dim blanket, his long eyelashes trembled slightly. He was almost suffocating, but he couldn't bear to part with her sweet kiss that made him completely immersed. Wei teased her in the past. His high and mighty attitude made him look like a master, even if he lost control. However, the young girl's arms were wrapped around his neck, and her burning passion made his skin crawl. His heart was beating like a drum. His muscles were trembling. It was as if he was controlled by her. She became his monarch, making him unable to move a finger. He could only accept her gift. He finally reached out and clasped her fingertips that went deep into his clothes. His hoarse voice was not persuasive at all. Stop! He stopped her weakly. Wei Wei Bai narrowed her eyes. A dazed and irresistible kiss made the young man's cheeks turn red. A thought suddenly flashed through Fu Yuheng's mind. It made his blank mind suddenly wake up. Without any hesitation, the young man tore off the top of his head, using it as a blanket, and grabbed the back of her slender neck. With a pull, he successfully trapped her in his embrace. Then, his eyes turned extremely dangerous and dark. His beautiful thin lips were still wet, but he pursed them tightly. Why is your kiss so familiar? She was much more familiar with him. Where did she go to train? Bliss, who had been kissed by her until he was dizzy and disoriented, felt so comfortable that he almost collapsed. How happy he was just now was how angry he was now. Fu Yuheng's eyes darkened. Have you kissed anyone before? Where did this kissing technique come from? The feeling of jealousy was like a poisonous snake, making him feel like an exploding lion. He couldn't wait to eat her. Wei Wei Bai thought that she had succeeded in seducing him. After all, the little lamb Fu looked like he was a big boss, but he was actually a noob. In addition, the night was long and boring. If he didn't flirt with her, he would feel embarrassed. In the end, this guy's brain worked very quickly. He actually noticed that her kissing skills were too good and abnormal. He had been in such a hurry that he had forgotten to disguise himself. Sigh, What a miscalculation. She couldn't say that she had trained with little yellow hair. In less than 2 days, little yellow hair would probably be a corpse on the streets. Fu Yuheng saw that her eyes were flickering, as if she couldn't give a reason. He asked gloomily, "How many men am I?" Was the purity from before all an act? How many people had she provoked before this? Thinking about her mother's occupation, his face darkened even more. Chapter 3102. Murderous intent appeared on his face. He was even scarier than those criminals. Wei Wei Bai thought for a while and slowly frowned, as if she had just understood the meaning of his question. Her face slowly turned red, and the tears in her eyes shone with anger. The seductive kitten just now. She suddenly became a fierce tiger. She didn't care that her neck was in someone else's hands. Instead, she reached out her hands, grabbed the young man's collar, and pulled it down. She had a fierce aura, as if she wanted to tear his clothes apart. Fu Yuheng, why do I have to report my love history when I kiss you? Are you afraid of AIDS? She sneered. Or do I have STDs? Do you want to go to the hospital for a full checkup before kissing you? No, you should draw a quarantine zone around you. Drag anyone who gets close to you for a checkup, in case they are sick and can infect you. She was mad. Her voice was almost roaring, and her aura was shocking. Her fingers were still pulling at his clothes. She looked like she wanted to die together with him. Fu Yuheng's anger and murderous intent just now was scattered by her. The cold deterrence that had always been useful to his subordinates. But to her, it was more like an accelerant. It turned her little temper into a big one. The kitten in front of him had turned into a fire-breathing dinosaur, wanting to spray him into pieces. Fu Yuheng pursed his lips, and his cold brows were still furrowed. He interrupted her word by word. He tried to snatch the right to speak. Your kiss, Wei Wei Bai mocked. Is your kissing skill good? Why, if you like bad kissing skills, you should have said so earlier. Like last time, I can print the contract and type out all your requirements so that I can memorize them, so as not to offend you. Fu Yuheng, you, Wei Wei Bai, what about you? You are being unreasonable. If you like young girls, you should have said so earlier, you pervert. Fu Yuheng, Wei Wei Bai, brother, you are the best. Do you like this style? Or do you like me to carry a kindergarten bag and sing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star for you? After saying that, she suddenly understood. Fu Yuheng. He finally understood what it meant to be unreasonable. This was the first time he had seen a girl being so unreasonable. Fu Yuheng, who had always dealt with mature people, was dumbfounded. That little bit of anger was turned into helplessness by her. He even wanted to let go of himself, tie her up with the blanket, and then cover her mouth with his hand. At this moment, Fu Yuheng, who looked like a boy who had just come of age, had a helpless look on his face, and Wei Wei Bai was still desperately pulling on his collar. What era is it now? Are you an old remnant of the feudal era? If you care so much about my kissing skills, why don't you ask me if I'm a virgin? These words were like a deadly blade. He pierced through Fu Yuheng's blood. He moved his lips and finally couldn't take it anymore. He lowered his head and kissed her. She was stunned. Then, with raised eyebrows, the young girl was unwilling to be outdone and fiercely kissed him back. The battle of lips and tongues began. Back and forth. It was a bloodbath. Her breathing was very messy, unlike the familiar seduction just now. Instead, he was at a loss as to what to do. They were utterly defeated. Fu Yuheng finally found some of his self-esteem as a man. He pinched her neck, loosely without much force, as if he was holding a kitten by the neck with a kind of threat. But he didn't hurt her. He left her bright red lips, his long eyelashes lowered, and his eyes were as gloomy as the night. The young man's thin lips were also unusually red, with a seductive, moist feeling. His voice was extremely low. If you change the topic again, I won't indulge you. Chapter 3103. Wei Wei Bai glared at him and snorted coldly. Fu Yuheng finally returned to the original question. You had a boyfriend before? Her kiss just now was too familiar and natural. This was not what he taught her. Wei Wei Bai looked at him from the corner of her eyes. Why? What do you want to do now that I have a boyfriend? Don't forget that I didn't want to sign that contract. If you think I'm dirty, you can terminate the contract. Fu Yuheng looked at her silently. His expressionless face started to be tainted with a hint of dark coldness. The gentle shell of the mask cracked. The dark side of the young man's heart was revealed. His fingers slowly stroked the back of her neck. Then he lowered his head and bit her ear gently. He gritted his teeth. It made her whole body stiffen. Only then did he let go of her slightly. His hoarse voice sounded in her ear. "You're so disobedient. If I terminate the contract, you'll be the one at fault. Your mom recently spent a few million yuan. Even if I give you a discount, you'll have to pay back more than 10 million yuan. If the contract is terminated, I want you to pay it back immediately." Wei Weibai was so angry that her whole body trembled. She sneered, "You're shameless. Fu Yuheng, I didn't spend the money. Or do you want to see how I force your mom to pay back the money now?" Bai Xiaoyu already knew that the Fu family's money was beyond her imagination. The recent expenses were even more shocking. She had completely treated Fu Qian as a black card ATM. If it was in the past, he would have reminded his father or adjusted the amount of living expenses he gave his father, because he did not intend to have anything to do with the Bai family after a year. How rich his family was and what class they were, there was no need to let them know. But recently, he had started to give his father unlimited amounts of money. He wanted to spend as much as he wanted for that woman. He did not tell anyone about this dark scheme. Behind the indulgence, it was a threat. His little girl was still trembling in his arms. After all, that sum of money was really too much for her. Fu Yuheng's fingers stroked her fair neck down, his fingertips lightly touching her thin back. It seemed like he was comforting her, more like he wanted to control her. As expected, she tensed up even more, and her entire body stiffened for quite a while. Then he said in a low voice, "No one." Fu Yuheng narrowed his eyes. The gloom in his eyes was obvious. It was as if he didn't trust her. Then, he heard her mutter in a low voice, "Didn't you want to support me? I'm afraid you'll think that I'm not a social butterfly. After all, don't people like you need to be open-minded when it comes to keeping mistresses?" Fu Yuheng's breath was caught in his throat when he heard this. He was going to suffocate to death. He liked the idea of letting go of a ghost. Of course, before he could say it out loud, he heard her continue, "I have to practice anyway, so I found a lot of porn to watch. I even took screenshots to practice." Fu Yuheng. Then he slowly ground his teeth, and his voice seemed to come from the abyss. It was exceptionally gloomy. "How do you practice? Do you want to go home with someone and practice with a dirty towel?" That little yellow hair hit him too lightly. The girl was silent for a long time before she said, embarrassedly, "Ice cream cone. What kind of name was that? Net name?" Before the murderous intent in Fu Yuheng's eyes disappeared, he heard her speak again. "Just a lick and you'll know." "Lick it." Fu Yuheng's body stiffened, and since Wei Weibai had already said it out loud, she didn't feel burdened anymore. "It's to study all kinds of kissing pictures and videos." Then, holding the ice cream and licking it before it melts. Fu Yuheng was finally sure. Chapter 3104. The ransom negotiation didn't seem to be going well. When Wei Weibai woke up, she saw Fu Yuheng knocking on the bed. His fingertips landed lightly on the edge of the bed. There was no sound, and he was unusually steady as he knocked on the bed bit by bit. The young man's lowered eyes were unusually quiet, and one couldn't tell that he was being kidnapped at all. His beautiful side profile was unusually pale. He noticed that she was awake. He leaned over and rubbed her hair. "Don't be afraid later." His voice was soft, and it was even gentle. Wei Weibai stared at him and was silent for a while before she suddenly said, "Are we going to be killed?" Fu Yuheng didn't expect her to say that. He was speechless for a while before he couldn't help but smile. "Do you hate me even more? After all, I was only going to kill me, but now I've implicated you." Wei Weibai rolled her eyes at him. "Are you scared out of your wits? If I really die, I'll look for the kidnappers. They're the murderers. What does it have to do with you? You're a victim like me. If I become a ghost, I'll only harm those who killed me." Fu Yuheng thought that her words were cute. He couldn't help but tease her. "If we're killed at the same time, I'll become a ghost like you and take revenge on those who killed us, okay?" Wei Weibai frowned. "You won't let me go even if you become a ghost." Fu Yuheng. Then he thought about it seriously and nodded seriously. "I won't let you go. Wei Wei Bai suddenly had a strange look in her eyes, as if she was looking at a pervert. There's a reason why you're successful in business. You signed a sugar daddy contract. If you don't get your money back, you'll have to chase after the debt, even if you die. After saying that, she yawned. Then she climbed out of the blanket. Her clothes were wrinkled, and her hair was messy. In this state, he could still take advantage of her verbally and gain some favorability points. He couldn't stand it if he leaned over and seduced her with his body. After Wei Wei Bai got up and tidied up her messy clothes, there was a sudden noise from the other side of the door. The gangster began to undo the faint lock on the door. Fu Yuheng suddenly reached out and grabbed Wei Wei Bai's fingers tightly. He seemed a little nervous. His palms were wet with sweat. Wei Wei Bai frowned, and her face paled. She whispered, "Don't be afraid. At most, you'll be a good man again after 18 years." Fu Yuheng glanced at her indifferently and remained silent for a few seconds before replying softly. Yes, it was a simple reply. Surprisingly, it was soft and a little sweet. The door opened. The criminal was not wearing a mask, nor was he wearing a mask. Each and every one of them looked ferocious. One look, and one could tell that they were murderers. Wei Wei Bai's face turned pale, and her body began to tremble. Fu Yuheng knew what she was afraid of. After all, everyone knew that the criminal had no intention of covering his face. They would definitely not end up well. The criminal came over and scolded, "Hurry up and come out. Do you want us to invite you in?" Fu Yuheng, on the other hand, did not react. He was not afraid, nor did he respond. But his fingers tightened on Wei Wei Bai. The girl's fingertips were cold. She was too afraid. When the two of them walked out, Fu Yuheng finally could not help but lower his head and whisper to her, "Listen to me later. When I tell you to escape, don't care about me and run out directly." Wei Wei Bai's eyes went blank for a moment before she looked up at him, but she saw that the young man's exquisite jaw seemed to be a little tense. He pursed his thin lips. His lips were bright red. Although he looked good, it was obvious that he was not as carefree as usual. Save button. Chapter 3105. Instead, there was a hint of coldness. She looked at him for a few seconds, then pursed her lips and lowered her head without saying anything. But the trembling of her fingers slowly stopped. After they walked out of the door, they were brought to the abandoned hospital hall. The empty and dilapidated place was eerie, like a haunted house. More than half of the kidnappers were gathered here, and there were a few middle-aged men drinking tea. Fu Yuheng glanced at them indifferently. The middle-aged man saw him and sneered. "Young Master Fu, you've really broadened our horizons." They were all the people Fu Yuheng had fired and humiliated. They didn't have to come themselves. But although the other party said that they would pay the ransom, for the sake of the ransom's safety, the other party made the ransom very complicated. They were a small group and sent a few people to accept the ransom and count the ransom amount. This was also a necessary thing to do. Otherwise, these criminals were not to be trifled with. The ransom amount was shockingly large. They didn't take it personally. If the criminals came to pick up the ransom, it was possible that this group of people would eat each other up and swallow the ransom. And humiliating Fu Yuheng was not necessary. They could just sit in the car outside and wait for the ransom to come. However, these people were humiliated by Fu Yuheng, and they couldn't stand it. They wouldn't be satisfied if they didn't take revenge for this humiliation. Anyway, Fu Yuheng wouldn't live past today, so they might as well return the anger. It would also let Fu Yuheng experience their embarrassment and the pain of the company. So the few of them sneered and humiliated Fu Yuheng one sentence after another. "You haven't even grown out your hair, and you dare to go against us? You don't have the ability, and you rely on your family background to suppress me. Are you worthy?" Wei Wei Bai couldn't stand it when she heard this. She couldn't help but jump out and say something. "Isn't this nonsense? The company belongs to his family. At most, you're paid to work in his family. Which worker scolds the boss? Are you worthy?" Originally, everyone's attention was on her. It was all on Fu Yuheng, and Wei Wei Bai's existence was basically non-existent. When she jumped out, everyone took a closer look and felt that they were still a doomed couple. When Wei Wei Bai jumped out, Fu Yuheng couldn't help but frown. With a tug of his fingers, he hid her behind him. Then he said indifferently, "I'm not worthy, but I hope that there's an uncle who can give me some face for my grandfather's sake and let me die with an intact corpse." His words indicated that he was admitting defeat. Immediately, the vengeful people at the scene were stunned. He felt much better. Moreover, there was no time to torture people today. It was enough to make Fu Yuheng admit defeat verbally and humiliate him. Where was Fu Yuheng's identity? Normally, he was also a person with high standards. They were not fools. They knew how powerful Fu Yuheng was. However, he was young, and there were too many obstacles. He was afraid that when he grew up, they would be in a much worse state than they were now. This was also the reason why they had to kill the hostage. They couldn't let this little tiger show its claws and grow into a big tiger. As for old Master Fu, he was already old. Even if he was a tiger, an old tiger was not scary at all. Killing Fu Yuheng was a must. The young man glanced at them indifferently. He was certain that there was not enough time and that the other party did not have any other ideas. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief. Clearly, all the plans were going according to his ideas step by step. If he was alone, he would not be so nervous. He silently glanced at the girl beside him. Chapter 3106. He saw her round eyes glaring fiercely at the people who humiliated him. The fear just now was replaced by anger. This little temper of his had even appeared. The corners of his mouth twitched helplessly. Seriously, she was not afraid of death. He silently took a step forward and blocked her, so that she would not be the first to be killed. The youth knew that under such circumstances, he should blame her for her rashness. But when she stood up, he did not know why, but his mood was actually a little soft and happy. Fu Yuheng felt that he would be infected by Wei Wei by sooner or later. His brain was going to degenerate with her. This was not a happy occasion. Those men were making phone calls again. It was a question of where to put the ransom and how to get it. Fu Yuheng narrowed his eyes slightly and remained silent. His fingers gently rubbed against the girl's fingers. The soft touch, the slightly wet feeling. It brought an excessive sense of intimacy. He liked this feeling, and it even made him calmer. Suddenly, the girl reached out her elbow and poked his waist. This was his sensitive belt. His body suddenly stiffened, but he heard the other party complain heartlessly, "Don't tickle my hand. It's uncomfortable." Fu Yuheng pursed his lips and did not say anything, but his fingers had stopped moving. Soon, the other party revealed ecstatic smiles on their faces. "Quick, we got the ransom." The two of them immediately ran out. Their accomplice's car was already parked at the door. 2 big boxes of cash were placed in the back seat of the car. They opened the boxes and immediately nodded, then closed the boxes. Then they turned back and said to the dozen or so criminals, "Do it cleanly." Fu Yuheng looked up indifferently. His fingers suddenly exerted force and grabbed the girl's fingers. Wei Wei Bai trembled and looked at him in confusion. But she saw that the youth's eyes had become cold and deep. His thin lips were tightly pursed. His fingers gently touched her fingertips again. It was as steady as if he was counting. Wei Wei Bai's fingers were a little uncomfortable, but she did not stop him. She did not even move. Just as the 2 criminals rushed over and were about to separate them and execute them separately, Fu Yuheng suddenly said to the middle-aged men who were standing at the door and preparing to leave, "All of you have gathered together for this event." One of the middle-aged men turned around and sneered. "What? You want to take revenge on us after you die? To tell you the truth, all of us participated in this event, but what can you do even if you know?" Another cowardly accomplice immediately tugged at his sleeve. "Let's go. It's over. Our plan has succeeded." Fu Yuheng's expression was unusually cold. There wasn't the slightest hint of unwillingness before death. On the contrary, he was so calm that it was frightening. They glanced at him and didn't dare to look at him again. He immediately ran to the door. This time, the event had gone too smoothly. Everything was just right. Therefore, these people were careless and let down their guard. As soon as he stepped out of the door, a bullet had already penetrated the body of one of the middle-aged men. The attack came out of nowhere. It was simply beyond everyone's expectations. When the others saw this, they were scared to death and immediately ran back. But as they ran, another one was shot and fell to the ground. No one knew if he was dead or alive. When Fu Yuheng started shooting, he suddenly dragged Wei Wei by and ran desperately toward the corridor of the hospital. More than a dozen criminals reacted at once. Chapter 3107. Wei Wei Bai expended all of her strength on the way out of the hospital. Fu Yuheng's breath gradually weakened. His head rested on her weak shoulder, and he had already closed his eyes and fainted. The wound on his leg dripped blood all the way to the ground. If the system hadn't said that it wasn't life-threatening, Wei Wei Bai thought that Fu Yuheng was going to die. After she used all her strength to drag Fu Yuheng out of the hospital, she realized that the matter was almost settled. Those kidnappers were all arrested one by one. She didn't even make it to the door. She was overwhelmed by Fu Yuheng. After all, no matter how strong the girl's body was, her strength was at its limit. She couldn't hold on with willpower alone. Her last impression was seeing a lot of people rushing in from the door. The system said that they were Fu Yuheng's men. Wei Wei Bai fainted in relief. Fu Yuheng was still on her back. He was so heavy. He didn't look fat, and his muscles weren't scary. Why was he so heavy? It was probably because of his high bones. When she fainted, she was still thinking about Fu Yuheng's weight. He continued to sleep and continued to sleep. Then, she had a strange dream. There were bones all over the ground and a lonely throne. The man sat on the white bone throne, and his fingers landed lightly on the rusty sword beside him. His beautiful golden eyes were half closed quietly, and the golden light was flowing. It was unusually gorgeous. Compared to the previous dream, there was a hint of gentleness and softness. Wei Wei Bai saw this dream again and frowned strangely. After all, it was a dream repeatedly. Even she felt that something was amiss. She looked at the bones all over the ground and couldn't help but tiptoe forward step by step. The man who looked like Yi Yuxuan was still sitting quietly. He must be asleep. Wei Wei Bai didn't have any defenses and just walked over. Suddenly, she felt something tighten around her wrist. Looking down, she saw a red string wrapped tightly around her wrist. The feeling of the red string cutting in her flesh was unusually clear. It was so clear that it hurt a little. Because of the pain, she couldn't help but reach out to touch the red string, wanting to loosen it a little. His fingers had just touched the red string. A powerful force pulled her forward. This power came too suddenly. Bai Weiwei's footsteps staggered. His entire body had already pounced over. Originally, there was still a long way to go before they reached the throne, but because they had jumped, they ended up in the arms of the golden-eyed man. The top of her head bumped into his chest. It was cold and hard. It was almost like knocking into a block of ice. Her fingers quickly grabbed the other party's clothes. The clothes were very tough, and she didn't know what material they were made of. Her breathing paused. She felt that the other party was too cold, similar to the temperature of a corpse. It was too real. It didn't seem like a dream at all. It felt more like real. Just as this thought surfaced in her mind, a hand suddenly landed lightly on her waist. Wei Wei Bai's body trembled as she was lifted up and placed on the other party's lap. Her face was forced to press against his chest. The other party didn't seem to have a heartbeat. Although she was confused, Wei Wei Bai still felt that this was a dream. And dreams were all kinds of messy things. It was normal for a person who could move to not have a heartbeat. She was just wondering why she kept having the same dream. And the texture of this dream was too strong. And that hand was already lightly touching her shoulder, the fingertips touching her hair. Chapter 3108. Wei Wei Bai looked up and saw the cold and calm man, who was like an exquisite puppet. There was still no fluctuation in his dead eyes. But his fingers did not stop. Instead, they passed through her hair and touched her face. Her soft cheeks made him feel a little pain when his fingers lightly touched them. She frowned and was about to avoid it, but that hand had already stopped. Then, it curled up slightly and did not continue to touch her. It was as if it was afraid of breaking her. Wei Wei Bai finally realized that something was wrong. This pain felt too real. It did not feel like a dream at all. It felt real. A trace of doubt flashed in Wei Wei Bai's eyes. But she saw that there was an ugly doll hanging from his wrist. The doll was densely wrapped in red threads, and the place where the red threads were connected was the man's beautiful and fair wrist. And on the other side of the red threads, she raised her hand in a daze and saw that the red thread on her wrist was the same as his. They were connected together. No matter how slow Wei Wei Bai was, she still realized that something was wrong. And that ugly doll looked like her no matter how she looked at it. The doll was ugly because it was wrapped in red threads. It was like a terrifying binding, and it looked abnormally scary. But those facial features were cute and perfect. They were exactly like her face, her realistic face. It was just a little cue. Wei Wei Bai had a bad feeling in her heart. After all, this was a dream that was so scary that it was close to reality, and she saw such a scary thing. Who wouldn't feel strange? Suddenly, that hand landed lightly on her back. It landed especially gently. It was too careful. Then, Wei Wei Bai saw the man who was hugging her lower his head slightly. Under his long eyelashes, that pair of golden eyes had opened completely. The man's thin red lips were pursed slightly. But he was silent. In a land of bones. The man's eyes were clear and empty, but they were also perfect. He was the perfect version of Yi Yuxuan. But there were too many emotional fluctuations. Originally, she thought that Yi Yuxuan was enough of a robot. Now, this could not even be called a robot. One could even say that he was a gem that lived as long as the heavens and the earth. It was sparkling and beautiful, perfect and resplendent. There was no sign of life. The atmosphere was lifeless. It was even more lifeless than that pile of bones. And this breathtakingly beautiful gem was already close to her cheek. He was not breathing. He stared at her quietly, as if he was examining something. Wei Wei Bai felt a huge pressure that made her unable to move. This kind of pressure was enough to make her soul tremble. She had transmigrated through so many planes. Logically speaking, she should not have such an obvious sense of fear. After all, he had encountered all kinds of weird, perverted, and insane things. There was no reason for a simple stare. He could make her feel cold from head to toe. The man looked at her quietly for a while and raised his other hand. The red thread wrapped around his wrist. The contrast between red and white had a tragic and gorgeous feeling. Wei Wei Bai really wanted to dodge. However, he found that he couldn't move at all. It was as if he had become a poor little hamster in a huge cage. There was nowhere for him to run. His fingertips had already reached the top of her head. Just when Bai Weiwei thought the other person's fingers would fall on her hair. In the next moment, his fingers continued to move up. Weiwei Bai couldn't help but look up and see a shocking scene. Above her head, in a very distant and high place, the fog was thick and rolling, and the outline of a round golden object was faintly discernible in the rolling fog. To facilitate the next reading, you can click on Chapter 3109. It was very far away, but she could see that huge outline. If someone with a phobia of gigantism saw it, their scalp would go numb. Just that one silhouette made by Wei Wei feel a sense of deterrence and an incomparably terrifying heaviness. Her breath stopped, and the man raised his finger, but elegantly and lightly bent it. As if he was hooking something unusually casually, he pointed it down. This point, in the rolling haze, that huge outline actually began to sink. Breaking through the black haze, the behemoth's round wheel appeared above their heads. Golden feathers of light fluttered down. They sat in the golden feathers of light, as if they were in a golden heaven. The man was still sitting quietly. His body was still like a silent stone, not moving at all. The only thing that moved was his hand. That huge golden wool was close to the point. Only then did Bai Weiwei see clearly that it was a machine-like clock made up of countless precision objects. It was just a form, because it was more than any clock in the world. It was beautiful, huge, complicated. Countless patterns of the sun, moon, and stars, and countless complicated spells. A huge number of complicated patterns that had almost never been seen before. They combined to form this terrifying and beautiful clock wheel. Among the countless golden feathers, she saw the needle of time in the middle of the wheel. In the vast expanse of gold, a touch of red was wrapped under the needle, as if it was preventing it from moving. Her eyes couldn't help but look at that red, and in the next moment, that red suddenly and gradually collapsed. The man's fingers suddenly clenched. When the red collapsed, it emitted a shocking red firework. It was like a firework, Those red fireworks were instantly swallowed up by the golden light. Not a single trace was left. Wei Wei Bai was stunned, feeling that this scene was too beautiful, too shocking. She slowly blinked her eyes and was about to say something. The man had already gently rested his chin on her shoulder. Then she heard an unusually calm, soft sigh. He seemed to want to say something. In the next second, she heard it. The system's roar. Wei Wei Bai. His voice was so loud that it was frightening. Bai Weiwei's body stiffened, and her eyes opened. He saw the ceiling of the hospital. Her mind was muddled, and her ears were ringing. She felt that her beauty had been shattered by the system's call just now. She paused for a few seconds before asking, "What's wrong? Are you trying to make me deaf?" The system said, "No, I saw you sleeping until you were snoring and drooling. I also saw the male lead beside you, so I was worried that your snoring and drooling would ruin your beauty and cause your favorability to drop, so I woke you up." When Wei Wei Bai heard this, she couldn't care less. She hurriedly wiped her mouth. Damn it, that little fairy snores when she sleeps. It was impossible for her to have snoring. If there was an illness, it had to be treated. She immediately turned to look, only to see Fu Yuheng lying on the bed next to hers, fast asleep. One of his legs was in a cast and hung high. It seemed to be quite serious. There was also a medical bandage on his cheek, which seemed to be a scratch. She glanced at Fu Yuheng and found that he was definitely not awake, and he didn't see her snoring either. She then let out a sigh of relief and looked at herself. She saw that although she was also lying on the bed, her hands and feet were intact, and her face was fine. At most, it seemed that when she fell, there was a scratch on her elbow, and she had also applied medicine and bandages. Chapter 31:10. Compared to the miserable state next door, she was basically a perfectly healthy person. Wei Wei Bai adjusted the pillow and said to the system, "I had a very realistic dream just now. I thought my soul had transmigrated again. That dream just now was too realistic. So realistic that she felt that something was wrong." The system was silent for a while before saying, "It's just a dream." Wei Wei Bai heard his tone. Her eyelashes drooped slightly, and a trace of gloomy doubt appeared in her eyes. But she didn't show any other emotions. She just responded faintly, "Yes, it's just a dream." Was it really just a dream? Wei Wei Bai closed her eyes expressionlessly, but she didn't fall asleep. But that dream was so clear that it seemed to be in front of her eyes. Not a trace of fading. And when the system saw that the host didn't seem to continue to pursue the matter, it silently put away its megaphone. Just now, her soul had entered the land of bones. No, it should be the land of bones. It had spread into the plane world. In the past, Yi Yuxuan's divinity just quietly stayed in one place and didn't move. But recently, his land of bones had started to spread. Little by little, it followed the red line and spread to the host. The system looked at the red line on the host's wrist, flipped through the tools, then reached out its little hand and began to grind the red line. It didn't break the red line. This divinity pulled the host to the land of bones every day. Sooner or later, she might not be able to come back. If it hadn't yelled at her to wake up just now, she probably didn't even know that her body was about to die. After all, the soul had traveled so far. The body couldn't hold the soul. It was equivalent to a corpse. As it was grinding, it suddenly heard Wei Wei Bai, whose eyes were closed, say softly, "Tongzi, there's something on my wrist." The system's body stiffened, and its movements also stopped. The red line on her wrist was too obvious. Could it be the host actually saw it? Then it heard the host say, "It looks like a red line. Do you see it?" The system stiffened for a long time before replying, No. Its tone was too chaotic. It felt that the host knew that it was lying. In the end, Wei Wei Bai slowly opened her eyes. There was no hesitation in her beautiful eyes. She said calmly, "Well, if you say no, I believe you." These words were said lightly, but the system was stunned for a long time. The corners of his mouth twitched, and he finally lowered his head in a daze, a trace of helplessness appearing in his round eyes. His hand remained stiff for a long time before it finally moved. He began to persist and work hard to continue cutting the red line. He had to leave Yi Yuxuan after gaining enough HP. A person like Yi Yuxuan would never be destined to have a red string of fate. This red line was the result of him using his own luck to forcibly connect the innocent host. Once the host's HP was full, then he would begin to suffer Yi Yuxuan's backlash. He would use his immense luck to draw away the life in her that was similar to his. It was as if he was a huge black hole, and the host is just a small strawberry beside the black hole. If it weren't for the fact that the black hole was in a deep slumber and the power of love was used to forcefully stop the operation of the black hole's power, this strawberry had long been swallowed and crushed. There was no chance of survival, and he had to stop the operation of this power before it could stop the operation of this power. After snatching enough HP, he would take her away from the black hole that was Yi Yuxuan by hook or by crook. He couldn't take the risk of letting the host lose her life again. Suddenly, he heard the host whisper, "Is Fu Yuheng disabled?" The system almost reflexively replied, "No. /quick /quick.